Recently, I've seen a lot of videos from people talking about how they would do something if they had to start again from scratch. So I thought I'd make my own version of this with a little bit of a twist, because I'm not just going to tell you what I would do, I'm going to explain what I've actually just done. Over the last 10 years, I've built a $10 million online education business. So I have that going on. But last year, I decided to try something completely new in parallel, which is a personal brand that teaches online education businesses to scale to 7 figures and beyond. And this new personal brand business is set to make $1 million this year in its second year. So in this video, I'm going to break it all down, explain how I'm thinking about this, how I thought about growing it, and how the revenue model works, so that you can copy exactly what I've done in your own space. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Olly Richards. I'm the founder of StoryLearning.com. I'm also an owner and investor in multiple other online education businesses. So I've got a fair bit of experience with this, but last year was the first time that I started something from scratch by myself. And the goal was to make it very much a personal brand, a one-person business, essentially. And I wanted to see, how can I leverage my knowledge, what's in my head, to build a very profitable one-person business with very low overheads, almost entirely profit-based. So just to give you a picture of how the last few years have panned out. So I first had the idea back in late 2022. That's when I first thought that I wanted to do this and started thinking it through. And then I started actually building the thing in 2023. So I spent most of this year, properly building, putting the plans into action. And then 2024 has really been the year when the revenue has hit. And like I said, we're on course. I keep saying we, I'm used to saying that. I'm on course to do about $1 million in revenue this year, of which it will be mostly profit. So I guess the reason this is useful to see is that there is a building phase necessary, but then the fruit that you sow here gets, it's further down the track that you reap the rewards. So there are 3 key parts to this process I'm going to explain to you. And the first is to identify your maximum point of leverage. The second is to build your audience. And the third is to design offers. And to be clear, if you're thinking, well, it's okay for this guy, he's teaching people to make money, you can do this exact same thing in any niche you want. And the proof really is my main business that I spent 10 years building is in the language learning niche, not exactly kind of big bucks area, but don't get distracted by the thing that I've actually just done. You can apply this to any niche, as I've already proven. You can go to StoryLearning.com, have a browse around the website to see kind of what we've built there. When I first sat down to plan this business, the main question I asked myself is, what is my maximum leverage? Meaning, of the stuff that I know, where do I have the most economic leverage in the wider marketplace? Because remembering that I wanted this to be a personal brand business that runs basically just with me, maybe a bit of support here and there, but no team, no infrastructure, nothing. I'm reliant on what's in my head. And this is relevant because we all have expertise in our head of some kind. And so this is the foundational part of actually monetizing this. What is my personal maximum point of leverage? And in my case, it was my business, Story Learning, that I mentioned. It's, not many people grow a business of this size. Nobody actually talks about and explains how their businesses work. There's a lot of people like teaching techniques to make money online, but it's kind of like do what I say, not what I do. I started thinking, okay, I have this experience that is going to be very valuable to people who are trying to build similar businesses. So that's going to be the thing that I trade on. It's my direct experience. And so the leverage point for me is I can help people scale online education businesses, not least because I'm involved in many different businesses. It's not just that one. So I have a lot of experience in that area. And note that there was the niching down that happened here. It wasn't just business. It wasn't just online business, but it's online education business. So I've very specifically gone after this because that's, niching down a couple of layers is always the right thing to do. And so my avatar then is someone who owns an online education business. Essentially, I'm helping the Ollie of 5 years ago to go from wherever they were at the time, 6 figures to 7 figures, or go on that journey of growing their business. So then when I started to think about, well, how do I pull that leverage lever? Lever comes from leverage, and I'm sure it does. How do I actually exploit this leverage tangibly? What do I do? I said, okay, well, I've got this experience. The best thing I can do is just teach what I know, because if you've got something unique, just put it out there. And so I wrote this document, which is called Case Study Anatomy of a $10 million online education business is huge, 118 pages. And I just wrote it in a Google Doc. So it's a big, long Google Doc where I basically just explain the entire workings of my business. Like no filters, nothing. How we do sales, marketing, how do we grow the team, even some thoughts on lifestyle and mental well-being and stuff I've learned over the years. I basically just put it all out there. Very fun exercise, actually, because I got to just talk about everything I'd learned over 10 years. And if you want to get a copy of this, by the way, it's completely free. You can download it at ollyrichards.co. There'll be a link in the description as well. So what's important to understand is that my process of thinking here was, what's my leverage? How can I exploit it? But it's not, but this works in absolutely any niche. If you teach pharmacists to deliver cancer medication, if you help motion designers to grow their business, if you're teaching people how to improve their gut, like it doesn't matter what you're doing. The fundamental process is to understand what your unique advantage is that's going to give you that maximum leverage. Everything else that happens in your business is downstream of this decision. And so often when I meet entrepreneurs who are struggling to grow, struggling to get traction, it's because they don't have this top level decision making going on. They haven't really thought about how what they do fits into the wider marketplace. So it sounds so simple. This is the stuff that everyone thinks, yeah, I know this. But if you get this right, you don't have to be great at business or marketing or anything. If you get this bit right, everything else, all your success is downstream of this because you've nailed your basic positioning. So having decided on that, then the next step is to build the audience. So once I'd understood what my maximum point of leverage was and who my avatar was, then I had to figure out how to go about building an audience. My fundamental belief, and I guess this just comes from having done this stuff for over 10 years now, is that the true asset in any online education business is your audience. Because if you can build an audience of people who follow you, who know, like, and trust you, they will continue to buy stuff from you for years to come. It's the asset, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And building an audience is fundamental to doing not anything online, but it's fundamental to any business that involves teaching of some kind, because there's that trust there. So I know that my avatar is 6- and 7-figure online education business owners. It's pretty specific. If we went online business, that's broader, but my avatar is very specific, and I have a potential audience here of certainly thousands, probably low tens of thousands, but it's not a great deal bigger than that. So I knew I was going to have to be very, very targeted, and I knew that I would want to build an audience, because also in this particular space of like a business coaching guruism, whatever you want to call it, trust is not something that comes easy. When people first discover you, they give you the same status in their mind as a serial killer, essentially, and it's your job to dig yourself out of the hole and prove them wrong. That's the job to be done. This is what makes the audience such an important part. If you can build an audience in this space who trust you, then my belief was that the intrinsic value of that audience that I would build would be huge. And so that's the goal. So once I had my positioning sorted out and a very clear idea of who my avatar was, the next key question to ask is, where are they hanging out so that I can get in front of them? You don't need to reinvent the wheel here. You don't need to find some kind of magical new source of attracting these people. There are people who already have these guys as their audience. So how do you get in front of them? So thinking through this, my specific avatar of online business owners, where are they? Well, I know that they're reading newsletters. I know that they are watching YouTube. I know that they are on social media, specifically Twitter and LinkedIn. And I know that I can probably also get in front of them with ads, with paid ads, although that's potentially a bit trickier because of targeting. Whenever you've got a very narrow niche of people, in my case, these 6-7-figure online business owners, the targeting is a problem because Facebook, etc., typically can't target that granularly. But if we can figure out the targeting, then they are there with ads. So what did I do? So this was my starting point. All the places that I felt confident that my avatar was going to be. So now the question is, well, how do I now go and tap into those audience sources? Well, when you do this, there are only really two ways that you can approach building an audience, and that is with either time or with resources. If you are starting your first business and you don't have that much money to spend, you're going to be spending your time, which, let's be clear, is not free, but it's pretty much your only option. Especially if you're new and unskilled, spending money on doing this kind of thing, you're probably going to flush it all down the toilet because you haven't done it before. So that's why you're going to be spending time. But if you know business, if you understand how to how to spend money to make money, to quote that really annoying phrase, then you've got resources at your disposal. And because I'm fortunate to have existing businesses, I had resources. I had time as well, but I had more resources than time. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to spend my way into attracting this audience. So I'm going to basically buy access to all these people. And remembering I had my case study document, which I thought was going to be the thing that would attract people. The job now is let's spend money to directly attract these people so they can come and read my case study, and then they'll be on my email newsletter, and then I have an audience that I can nurture. That's the basic equation, right? So for the first 12 months, like when I first started this business, I was not actually in any kind of rush. I thought to myself, look, I'm just going to build this slowly over the next 3 to 5 years. Let's see what I can do. If I can build this audience for the next few years, I know it's going to be valuable. So let's not worry about making money. Let's just build the audience, and then the money will come in time. And so for the whole of 2023, I basically just treated it as one big experiment. My goal was, how can I test things out as quickly as possible in order to find where my audience is and the most efficient way of getting in front of them. And so I spent that year a total of $109,000. And again, don't be put off by this. You don't have to spend this money. You can use time instead. Because I had resources, I decided to spend it. And so I spent that money over the course of 2023. And as a result of all of that, I got the grand total of 12,631 email subscribers who are reading and opening my newsletter, so they're engaged. I had 545 YouTube subscribers, 2,500 Twitter followers, and about 3,000 LinkedIn followers. That was the kind of the net result of all my efforts in 2023. By the time you watch this video, it's going to be hopefully bigger. And what that looked like specifically was I bought sponsorships in newsletters. I started posting on social media, brand new accounts. I ran some ads, and I started a YouTube channel. Now that's quite a lot of things, but bear in mind that I had some existing advantage here. So I've been making content for a long time, so YouTube was kind of like low-hanging fruit for me. It's quite easy to do. I hired a team to help me run social, so I didn't actually spend much time on that in particular. And then I worked on the sponsorships and the ads myself. That was the main thing that I was focusing on. So of all of this effort, the really key thing is to understand and appreciate that not all of it's going to work. And the thing about using resources to get these things done rather than time is that you get to learn the lessons faster. And one of the key things that I've discovered about entrepreneurship is that speed to solution is so important, because when you compound that over a period of years, then you end up just growing so much faster. But there was one question remaining, which was, who are the buyers? Are they even buyers? It's perfectly possible, even likely if you do it wrong, to build a great list of people who do not actually buy anything from you. And I needed to establish whether or not there were people, the people I was getting on my list were actually buyers. I was getting some very cheap leads from certain places, but how did I know whether they were buyers? If they weren't buyers, I wanted to figure this out as soon as possible. So I ran one digital workshop. It was I went a bit overboard really. It was an incredibly dense 5-day thing where I showed how all of my marketing worked in my language business. It's called 7-Figure Marketing Stack. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check it out. So I taught this live workshop. It was only a couple of $100, and I figured out from that. I went back and tracked all the people who bought, because I tracked very carefully. And I figured out, look, of all the different places that I was advertising, there were a very specific group of people who were actually buying. Like with everything in business and life, it was 80-20 all the way. So this was about halfway through 2023. And so this told me very directly where I was spending money that was bringing in buyers, and where I was spending money where I was bringing in people who did not buy. And that allowed me to take a machete to the whole advertising machine and focus down only on the things that were working. And that's a very important approach to understand for growing a new business. You've got to put a bunch of stuff out there and then see what sticks, rather than doing one thing and expecting that to work. It's a very important concept because you don't know what's going to work in advance. And so the solution is to try a lot of things, look for the 80-20, see where you have traction, and then double down on that. I was able to figure this all out quite quickly because I was prepared to spend resources. If I was doing all of this stuff free, just with my time, I would either have to really work flat out to achieve the same amount of impact, or else just wait a couple of years to get the result, to get these learnings, rather than the 6 months that it actually took me. So by this point, to recap, I had established exactly what my unique positioning was and who my avatar was. I'd also figured out the 80-20 of how to get in front of them. So now I had a very strong foundations for a business. And this is where I moved on to part 3, which is designing offers. Similar to the marketing, you don't know what offers are going to work when you first begin. You can have an idea, but you don't know until you actually put stuff out there. And so one of the principles, similarly to the marketing for offer creation, is to do offer creation very, very quickly. What you don't do is spend a year making something and then launch it, because if it doesn't work, you've wasted a year. You want to put stuff out there quickly as a minimum viable product, figure out what works. And so I started asking myself the question, well, what do I know? From the last 6 months of activity, what have I discovered? And again, this is the benefit of taking a lot of action. Well, I knew that people bought the workshops. So I had about 150 people sign up for my 7-figure marketing stack workshop. So from that, I deduced, all right, people like the idea of spending a couple of $100 on a very valuable live workshop that teaches a very specific skill. And I've since done a whole bunch of those. So I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. I should do more of those. But also by that point, I had entrepreneurs start to inquire about working with me one-on-one, and quite a few people actually. And so I had also established that there were people willing to pay to work with me one-on-one, which was kind of, when I first started thinking about this business, one of my main long-term ideas. It was, the theory went, well, if I have this experience building businesses and I can attract an audience of entrepreneurs who are trying to do the same thing, then it's logical that they would want to work with me one-on-one and pay for the opportunity, just like I've done with many of my coaches and mentors in the past. So that was kind of always the long-term idea. What happened was people started inquiring about this much, much sooner than I'd ever anticipated. It was month 2 or 3, I was already starting to get inquiries. Actually, I turned people away for a long time because I thought, no, let's just give it a bit more time. And so what I decided to do was to run 12 of these workshops, of these live workshops. I thought, well, let's do one every month. So then once they've been built, I can start to offer, I can have one that I promote once a month. And then I started to make these one-to-one packages available so that if someone wanted to work with me directly, they could. It's very expensive, but for the right person who's trying to scale their business, it makes sense. So these were the 2 things that I'd managed to actually validate quite early on just by being in the game and trying things out. And that was enough for me to then decide to double down on those 2 things. Any audience that you build online is going to skew beginner, but you're also going to have a small number of people on there who are more advanced and who have deeper pockets. And so it made sense for me to, on the one hand, tap into the more beginner element of my audience to offer these workshops that are very, very, very affordable, but very valuable, and kind of one-off things. But then also make the very high ticket thing available, because that way you really get to serve both ends of the audience at an appropriate level, whilst also providing value and tapping into the money that's on the table there from that list. So the way that I thought about it was as follows. I sort of conceived of the business in 2 parts. For the workshops, I thought, well, this is something that lots of people can buy. It's going to be passive. So once it's been built, when I run it live, it's not passive, but once it's been built, it's completely passive. So let's build these assets, 12 of them, that I can just sell once a month. They will be passive assets that will pay for my team. So essentially all of the business expenses that I'm building up. So the team that's helping me with social media, my software costs, any advertising that I pay for, all of that will be covered by these workshops, which then leaves my one-to-one work up here to be pure profit. This covers the costs. This is pure profit. So even though I'm spending my time on this, it is time for money to a certain extent. it is time for a lot of money, and it's also pure profit. In so many businesses that try and scale and get big, they charge a lot of money for stuff, but then they have so much team, so much overhead, so many expenses that they end up with actually keeping very little of it. With this model, it all becomes profit. And again, just to reiterate, you can do this in absolutely any space. Many years ago, I used to do a very similar thing with languages. I used to offer one-to-one language coaching, which would fit right into this bracket. So the net result of all of this was as follows. So in 2024, I'm recording this currently at the beginning of June 2024, and based on the first 5 months of the year, annualized, I'm on track to make $536,400. That's obviously not going to be exactly that number, and that is with 61,000 of expenses, again annualized. That's going to generate around $500,000 in net profit at the end. I haven't calculated the profit margin, but as you can see, it's very, very high. But the thing is that in the 18 months that I've been running my business, I have not actually sold any of my one-to-one work. Everything that all the people that I'm working with now have come from inbound inquiries. I've not sent a single email to promote that. I'm not quite sure why I haven't, to be honest. I think it's because I'm in the fortunate position of not needing to, and having a business that runs purely on inbound inquiries is very nice. It's nice energy, and so a big part of me thinks, well, things are quite nice, so why disrupt that? But I know that if I did start to run promotions for this, and I did start to actively try and sell it, even just a little bit, it's obviously going to generate a lot more income. So I'm pretty confident in saying that the available capacity, the available financial capacity of this business, with no selling, is 475k. Most likely, with some selling, if I fell on hard times and really needed to make as much money as possible tomorrow, then it's gonna quite easily generate $1 million. But the key point is that even if it was less than that, remember, it's all still profit, and this is where the business model equation really comes in. So at the beginning of this, I talked about how my main intention for this business was to be a one-person operation, because I did not want to build more team and overhead, etc., etc. And so really to have a one-person business with virtually no expenses that brings in anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million of profit annually is equivalent to a $5 million a business that does $5 million annual revenue with a 20% profit margin, which is pretty normal. These businesses turn over the exact same amount of profit, except this one has very low overhead, zero stress, and is very nice. A business that's doing $5 million at a 20% profit margin is stressful. You've got 20, 30 team members, you've got a lot of things happening, you can't afford to take holidays most of the time. I know this because to a large extent, my main business, Story Learning, looks a lot more like this. It's this model. And I was very clear that I didn't want that, which is why I went straight for this model. It's amazing how the choices that you make at the start have all of these downstream effects. And so often, I meet entrepreneurs who kind of sleepwalk into building these quite big businesses that really create a prison of sorts for them, something that they can't take a holiday from, that they have to keep working in, that bring with them a whole load of stress and big numbers, but actually keeping a lot less of it in the end. So to recap, if you ask me how I would build a brand new business if I had to start from scratch, this is not how I would do it, this is how I have done it, and there are 3 parts. And if I did have to start it again, this is the exact process I would follow. So it is firstly identifying the maximum point of leverage that you have personally. Secondly, it is building an audience around that. And 3, it is then designing very well-created offers that allow you to extract the maximum amount of value from the asset that you have created. But with that all said, I do have one massive advantage compared to entrepreneurs that have never made money before, and that is mindset. And you can't underestimate this. I know that I can do it. I have this intrinsic confidence that's come from experience. And in order for you to build a 7-figure business, this is the first thing that you need to work on, is your own mindset. And if you look at this video over here, I will explain exactly how to start thinking bigger.